Hello, hello, everyone. It
Hello,
is that
everyone.
again. Real Talk with Jill and Tia. We are
Yes,
so happy to have you with us, right, Tia?
yes, we are. We're super excited about it. This is episode 5. So we are, 5 weeks in a row, really
Yeah,
working through LinkedIn Live. I love it.
I know. We've made it past the 4 week mark. Yay! It's always worth celebrating things.
Yes, yes. And we love the audience that's showing up each week, either live or looking at our replays on YouTube. So we're super excited to have you all here. Please write in the comments where you are listening from. And we're excited to have you as a part of our network.
Absolutely. And it's even helpful too if you feel like it, hashtag live or hashtag replay, because that lets us know kind of like when you circle back and see if there's any additional questions or comments.
Yes.
So,
That's awesome. Yes, because we do go back and look at the comments, and sometimes we go back and add additional information that we ended up talking about
mhm.
on the live. So absolutely, make sure you check back, look at the comments. So I love the hashtag live, hashtag replay, because that
Mhm.
lets us know.
Yeah, and if you aren't joining us live, I know you're going to want to be here for the replay because today we are talking about influential leaders.
Yes.
And we're super excited because we actually got to do a little bit of this, a little conversation with the Women in Food Safety group last week. And man, it was a hot topic, wasn't it?
Yes, it was awesome. I mean, I love learning from that group of women, which is
Mhm.
amazing. And the setup is really around discussion and communication. And there was just such great feedback coming from that discussion that it was awesome. And it kind of led us to having this conversation this week.
Well, and why wouldn't we have this conversation? Because we know if we're going to be leaders in food safety and quality, we need to learn how to better influence because we know people really love food safety as much as we do because it's so much fun.
Yes,
But sometimes we need that little extra push.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I don't know about you, Tia, but when I first started out, and I know I'm dating myself because it's been a few years, but I had people who often said, don't worry because the data will set you free, right? When you are trying to look at food safety and sell it within your organization, the data will always set you free. Uh-uh.
Mhm.
I learned a long time ago as a leader that wasn't the path forward.
No.
So,
And a lot of people think about data being the only way to influence others. And so, a little bit about what we talked about with that group is that really this rational influence.
mhm,
People use it the most, but it's one of the least effective ways of influencing others. It's really around these soft skills of inspiration and making sure that you're inspiring other people to believe your mission is really what leads to compliance and full ownership, right, of what you're trying to do, which is amazing.
yeah, because we talk about this all the time with people. We are not looking for just an environment of compliance.
Right.
We know that from a maturity standpoint for food safety culture, we need to move past that.
Yes.
So if the conversation is always around, well, does that meet regulatory requirements? Does that meet a GFSI requirement? That's not allowing us to influence and move us past this compliant state.
Right. Absolutely. And we always talk about integration of food safety and quality, right? Like that's really key to
Mhm.
building a world-class food safety and quality culture. We believe that, we've seen that, right? Like if you go into organizations that have a really strong food safety and quality culture, food safety and quality is integrated in every part of the business. You have to be an influential leader in order to integrate. You have to be able to talk with your cross functional counterparts. You have to
Mhm.
be able to have those conversations and get them to care about FSQ. And so influential leadership is a huge piece of that.
Yeah. And you know what I love? Everybody on that's commented so far, like I know you all know this. So like, hi Duncan. I know in the UK you probably have some of these things that pop up as well. So I love hearing your perspective on that. And
Yes.
Jen, thanks for joining us on vacation. We appreciate it. And Hey, Corey in Milwaukee, go Badgers, Wisconsin fan here. Tammy over in Austin, it is great to have you join us. And of course, Austin, it is always a pleasure to have you with us.
Yes, yes. You know what, Jill? I'm waiting for the opportunity where someone's like, hey, I'm here from Tennessee, so I can shout out my volunteers. It's so funny. I feel like everyone that I'm connected with are somewhere in the Midwest. Um, so you guys are pretty deep, but I'm gonna start bringing my Tennessee friends in.
Good. We want to see some of those Tennessee friends. They're coming.
They are.
Yeah. And, if you are new and you haven't already been on a LinkedIn Live or no, Tia and I, we really like to consider ourselves your go-to team to help with food safety, quality, leadership, and culture. We are nerds about it. And not just the food safety side, but really this integration of leadership because of the experiences that we've had. And we not only do, you know, we know that it starts with you.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that when we talk about food safety culture, it really helps to have the support of our, executive teams and top leadership. But at the end of the day, the parts that are within your control is what you do. And that's why we're here to help at all of those different phases of where you're at and where your team's at to help you move forward.
Yeah.
So every Wednesday at noon Eastern, we'd love to have you join us.
Yes. We're so excited that you're here. Corey, that's so funny. You don't claim Milwaukee. That's funny. Yes, we're super excited to be here and really talk about real food safety, right? And the things that you're dealing with and really get real about what's happening, so that you yourself as a food safety and quality professional can help push the culture forward, even if you're in an environment where you don't have the top leadership support or people aren't really getting it, right? We're here to provide these tips each and every week to help you make one change, every week in your organization, that, believe me, will make a change, even if it's just in your local level where you are enjoying the work that you're doing, that you're seeing the progress happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Tia, you and I both have been in bigger companies, but we've also been in small and medium companies where we know that we were either like a one-woman show in food safety and quality, or we had a really small, mighty team. And having some conversation with others to see what are people experiencing? What other perspectives are out there? Like, how else are people doing things? That's what we're here to share and learn more about on LinkedIn Live, because the only way we can all get better together is by having conversations around these things.
Right.
So,
And sharing our learnings and best practices.
mm-hmm.
So let's talk about influential leaders today. So when people think about influential leaders, and this is one thing that we ask the for women in food safety group, is like, what do they think about? And some things kind of come to mind around consistency and ethics and being authentic and doing what, walking their talk, right? And doing what they say they're going to do. Some people kind of think about the opposite. I'm like, oh, you're trying to influence me. So you're trying to play politics. And I love talking about it from this perspective, and we wanted to talk about it early on, where we don't really mean playing politics at all. And if you're an influential leader, you really are being authentic in the way that you do work. So it's not really politics at all, even though some people might think that it is, right?
Yeah, and if you're on or doing the replay, or if you're live, it'd be great to drop in the comments, like, what does an influential leader mean to you?
Yes.
We love hearing how other people see that. And Tia, one of the things I think about when we talk about playing politics, in my mind, what that conjures up is like this manipulation game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is really a distinguishing point, right? Between playing politics to me, feels more manipulative, but being influential is really about inspiring and really alignment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And when you look at the difference, there are manipulative people, right, that are trying to influence others. But what you really find is that eventually those people lose some of the things that we're going to talk about. They lose those key qualities of being influential because people figure them out. When you are actually living your values and being influential that way, people realize that, okay, you're looking out for the best of not just yourself, but the team and others, which means not just food safety and quality, but the organization as a whole.
Yeah. And I like to think about it too, is that when you're influencing, it's really about you kind of stepping into your power, because that's when you are aligned and you really shine through, because you're living in your values, you're really bringing your whole self out, and by doing that, that's the foundation of what being an influential leader is. So, right, if you need resources for food safety and quality improvements, you need to influence. I don't know about you, but I've seen like ROI and pleading for resources doesn't get you where you need to be. So you really need to think about how being influential can help you move forward and help your team move forward, even the organization.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So let's dive in, right?
we've got 3 things that we want to share with you about understanding influence in a different way in food
Yes.
safety and quality. So
the number one that we want to talk about is being authentic. So for us, being authentic means that you are consistently communicating your values and staying true to your values, focusing on those individual relationships and those real conversations. So for me, when I join a new group or a new team, or when I'm meeting someone new, I like to be as transparent as possible. I like to let them know what my values are, how I like to work. And then I also like to hear those things from them. So, like, I think back to times where I've joined a new company or started leading a new team. And one of my values is around transparency. So I spend time talking through how I'm going to be transparent as a leader. So they know I'm going to be transparent with everything that I can be. And as a leader, we know that there's some things that we can't quite say yet, right? Because there's a communication plan and all those other things. I'm transparent enough where, we're not ready to have that information out yet. There's still some things that need to align. When it's time, you'll hear it first from me. And so I like that's one of my values, is transparency. But it also opens up on the other side where my team can be transparent with me, and I encourage them to. So that's one way that I focus on being authentic with the group and when I'm joining a new organization.
Well, and that's so important because everyone can sniff out if someone's not being transparent, right? If being truthful and holding back are 2 different things. So I can be truthful, but I can hold back information, which people sense.
Yeah.
I remember when we were going through some changes at our organization, and we knew something was up. Like, we saw people were in meetings, we saw different conversations going on. And when we would ask about it and get an answer like, oh, no, we're just planning for next year's budgeting, we were kind of like, not buying it.
Right.
And so as a leader, even if you can step into a space where you're like you said, how can we be transparent to say, there is something that's being worked on. We're not at liberty to talk about it right now. And as soon as I can, you'll be the first to know.
Right.
Sometimes we can't share everything, but we can share what we know will be happening next.
Exactly.
And if we're going to influence people to come along with us, don't we need to do that?
Exactly. I love Austin's comment where he says, I would argue that developing a food safety culture team requires a bit of politics because it requires recruiting people to support your cause. This isn't a bad thing. And I love this comment because there is a good side of politics, right? And for me, all corporations, all groups have a sense of politics, right? When people look at you as a leader and you're having these conversations and you're really recruiting people, right, to support your cause, everyone on the team that's listening to you, as long as they know that no matter what, you are looking out for the benefit of the team, and they know that you're always going to do the right thing, or they know what your values are and that you're going to stay consistent and true to those, then the politics look a little different, right? People really appreciate that you're going to put everything on the line. Of course, you're going to talk about how great, food safety and quality is and why you need to invest in food safety and quality, right? But the thing of it is, they know that if it's not the right thing to do, you would say that, because you're staying true to who you are and to your values, which is all about being that authentic person.
Well, isn't that part of influencing? Because when we're looking to influence someone, we're looking for them to buy into a belief that we have or something that we need to do.
Mhm.
So the more we can understand even somebody else's values and beliefs, the better we can understand what would it look like for them to be able to align from that.
Right.
And I don't know if any of you are Malcolm Gladwell fans, but I am. And years ago, he wrote a book about the tipping point. And while it's not all about values and beliefs, I think the concept is really interesting because, right, people can be on the fence for a long time or hesitant to say yes. But what is the tipping point? And that alignment of values and beliefs helps that tipping point go over so that you
Right.
can properly or, effectively influence.
Right, exactly. And when you talk about that and when you talk about the alignment, it's so important for people to understand who you are and who your authentic self is. What are your values? But then it's also really important for you to understand what their values are.
Mm-hmm.
As a leader, as a cross-functional partner, as someone that's also trying to influence in their role, right? It's so important for you to understand what do they value, so that again, when you're having those conversations with them, you can have transparent conversations around how this supports not just what you need, but also what they need. And again, that's another way to show that you are thinking about the full team in your decisions.
Yeah, I always joke because I'm like, sometimes our values or beliefs do line up like how Lego stacks so nicely, but
Yeah,
not that often. Usually it's something more like a pickup sticks game where we see some overlap and some parts together, but there isn't necessarily all alignment. Um, and so those are things where even if you don't have the same value or belief about something, doesn't mean that you don't have an intersection that can still perhaps be that touch point or that tipping point.
right.
And it's understanding from another perspective what that could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when we talk about values, making sure that your values actually align with the organization that you're with, right? Because that also drives the type of people that they
Mhm.
hire, and
Easier
their
to
values.
influence people because you're aligned.
Right, exactly. And
Mhm.
that's so important because as you are communicating things like what Tammy's saying, like we're the translator of quality, right? To
Mm.
different people, different roles, different perspectives. If we all have the same core values of we want to make sure that our consumers are safe when they consume our food, that we have high quality, that we have a premium product, even whatever those core values are, um, if we all align to that, it's a little bit easier to pull on. We need to clean our equipment every 3 days because if we don't, we have food safety issues or we have poor quality issues. And we know that's a value of this company and we know it's a value of ourselves as leaders of the company.
Yeah.
Those are the type of things that you want to communicate to your cross-functional partners, so that you can be influential to them based off of your authentic self and your values.
Hmm. When we talk about values and beliefs, right, those are the things that we've learned over time in multiple scenarios, and we usually hang on to those tightly. Those are the things that create the stories in our heads about even the things that are, right or wrong and what we believe in. And so, of course, when we talk about values, it never fails that friction will come up. And that's where I think how powerful when we get this message to tell us something's off here.
Mhm.
And instead of leaning into the anger or frustration, how can you sit with that for a moment to understand, what is this telling me? And, I always chuckle because sometimes it comes in subtle ways and sometimes overt. And
Mhm.
I know you've all experienced this, but I do remember when I was working, integrated poultry, we were, reaching across to the live side to talk about how programs could be aligned. And one of the top leaders over there, we would have some pretty in-depth conversations about how we could better be aligned, how it would look, what was needed, and all those details. And it was always interesting because I felt really good, like, wow, we've really kind of developed some trust here, and this is really great. And then every so often, we'd be in a meeting, like a larger meeting, and all of a sudden, the things that it seemed like we agreed on weren't the things that were coming out of this person's mouth.
Mm.
And it was just subtle. So it wasn't anything like direct, but you just get this sense.
Right.
And I
Right.
wish at the moment I had known that was one of the messages to go back and be like, hey, I think we were a little off here, or
Yeah.
I understood this different. Can you tell me more about it?
Mm.
Instead, I'll be honest, in some of my early days, I was kind of like, well, you big idiot. Like, what the heck changed? I thought we had an agreement. I
Right.
wasn't always the most mature about it.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, and to bring up friction, right? Because there's going to be times that you feel like you're aligned, and then
Mm,
you get into a meeting or you get into a conversation, and you're not aligned. Maybe you weren't as influential as you thought that you were. And I love the example that you're talking about, where you didn't necessarily confront it at the time.
mhm,
And should have, right? So if
mhm,
you find yourself in a situation where you have that friction, it's the right thing to do is to talk about it. I remember my very first trial. We were starting up a new piece of equipment, and we were having issues where the equipment was chopping some of the product and causing the product to kind of splatter throughout the box. And I had built the quality demonstration run and all the success criteria for it. But chopping of the product wasn't part of that. It's something
mhm,
that we had never really seen before, but something that we got with the new equipment. And I remember my operations lead, we were basically failing, the trial because of that. And my operations lead said, well, it's not written on your quality success criteria. And I said to him,
mm,
that's the friction, right? And for me, I confronted it because we can't let the product go out. So I said, well, there could be a lot of quality issues that we have that we didn't know, and I can write it on the sheet if it makes you feel better. But we both know that this is not quality product, and we both know we don't want our consumers getting it. And I remember it was a long day, and I remember him saying, "You're right. Okay." You're right. Okay. We know we can't release this product. What are we going to do for tomorrow? And we corrected it. I worked with maintenance. We had conversations and we got it corrected. And the next day we passed. But it's one of the things that, I thought we were all on the same page on what quality product is. And even if it's not written down, it's, we know this not quality product. And just from frustration of that whole day, he kind of threw that up. And I'm like, we know what quality product is. Is this our values? And the answer
mm.
is no. So we did it again the next day and got it right.
Well, and I think that's a good point because when we talk about how do we influence and how do values align, we know there's going to be friction because we
Mm-hmm.
don't know all of the things that go on in each other's heads. But I think it also helps because depending on what you're maybe drawn to when it comes to some of these times, like Tia, you were like, yep, I'm going to stay, I can stand in this space and I can say something right now.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in that space, since it was actually a senior leader, I was kind of hesitant to say something.
Yeah.
So instead, what I've done now is I actually just have a few, statements that I can whip out in a moment that allow me some space to understand a little bit more about what's going on and how I want to move forward. Because I also know that being influential means I don't want to burn bridges or say something that makes somebody go, nope, I'm not buying her story. So
Right.
even things like, you'll hear me say things like, "Wow, I haven't considered that perspective before. Can you tell me more about that?"
Hmm.
That's part of my let's bring this from I feel frustrated down a little bit so that I can explore that belief that somebody else has that I probably really don't understand well enough.
Hmm.
So,
That's a really good tip and a really great takeaway is to practice these things. Be
mhm,
prepared for situations that you're going to be in and what you're going to say.
mhm,
Because sometimes it's hard to think on the spot, especially if you are someone new to the organization or you just moved into a leadership role or,
mhm.
you're having a conversation with the CEO. Right, that's a little nerve wracking, and you might not even feel comfortable standing up to that person or speaking out against the person. So being ready with those phrases,
Mhm.
I mean, I think that's a great tip.
Yeah,
That's a
and
great tip.
even the one that you shared, because we are trying to build alignment within the organization and across our teams, like, "Hey, can you just share with me, like, how does this support our value of X?
Right.
How does this support our belief in this?"
Mhm.
That way it's a pause for everybody to say, "Oh, it's not my personal belief all the time," right? Hopefully we're aligned. But even if we're not, can we align to this greater good of our organization so that we can, move forward and hopefully find the influence that we need to get us ahead, but
Right.
also another perspective that maybe we didn't consider.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And then, my story is, I was working with the operations lead. And one thing that helped me in that situation is exactly what our second point is
Mm.
that we had trust amongst each other.
Yeah, I always chuckle because I was in sales for a couple years. And one thing that was always drilled into me was we buy from people we trust. But even in food safety and quality, right? If we want people to buy into what we're talking about and have that influence, we need to start with this foundation of trust. And I chuckle because it doesn't mean like, hey, I trust you so much, you're on my Thanksgiving invite list. But like, how
Right.
can I have a level of trust with you here in this relationship to help us move forward and align our values and have that trust?
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you think about trust in the workplace, it's so important that they trust you on a professional level
Mhm.
and they also trust you on a personal level. So, one of the things that we focus on at Catalyst is building strong technical skills and strong people skills. They are both important when you think about the integration of food safety and quality. And that's why our process works, right? Is because we focus on both of those. So you have to spend time building the trust that you know what you're talking about from a technical standpoint, but then you also are building the trust on the personal side. So
Mhm.
my operations lead, once we got to this point of friction, he trusted my professional opinion. Um, and then he also trusted that I'm going to do the right thing for us as a team, right? Like we're both on the same team. We're both going to have the conversation about why we didn't pass, the quality trial and what we're going to do differently next time, the next day. And he trusted that I'm going to have his back. I trusted that he's going to have my back when we go and have those conversations. But because we built trust even throughout the organization, we trusted that our leadership team was going to have our back. So
Yeah.
that's super important.
And that is really a hard, I'm going to say it's a hard concept sometimes to understand and to actually put into action when you maybe don't know someone as well as you want.
Hmm.
And so, T, I know you shared stories about even with your team when people would come and perhaps question someone on your team to say, well, is this the right thing to do? And helping them stand in that space to say, I'm certain, and knowing that you would be there to trust them. And I've had those type of situations too, where someone, I mean, come on, I come from meat and poultry, foreign material, right? Where someone would come to one of my quality managers and be like, is that really what we're going to do? And I always said, you stand where you need to be because you know what you're doing. We all agree on the foundational pieces. I've always got your back.
Right.
That goes a long
Absolutely.
way, long way.
It is. It is. And it doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes, right?
Mhm.
And the people in your circle know that you're going to make mistakes, but it's about owning those mistakes when it happened. Like
Mhm.
I remember being young in my career, and we had something happen and I issued a destroy. And so the product was destroyed. And I remember it was an operations counterpart that came up to me and they said, Tia, did we really need to destroy that product? And I was like, yeah, XYZ. And they're like, well, why couldn't we do this? And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Mhm.
That makes sense. So really sitting into like, I made the wrong decision at this point. I should have thought through XYZ. What else should I think about in this situation? And really learning from it. And so now that person trusts that the next time we have that issue or a similar issue, I'm going to think through these steps, which because, I wasn't prepared or, I didn't have the experience. I made the wrong decision, or maybe even a more conservative decision than I should have made. I maybe should have rolled in more people to kind of understand what can we do to save some of the product, or all of the product, or whatever it happens to be. So that's at that moment, that's building trust for us, because that
Yeah.
person understood that, okay, I'm going to think about it a little bit differently. I can own my mistakes.
Yeah, that really shows kind of the caliber of your characteristics. So when you are looking to influence someone, they already have this insight to say, you know what? Yep, I'll follow Tia. I'll follow this person because I already have this level of trust with them.
Right. Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
actually today, and we do coordinate things a little bit, but this actually worked out really well. Out on my post today is something that I call the trust ladder.
Mm,
And the reason I put it out there is because as influential leaders, we know trust is important, right? We're talking about it. But we've all had experiences where, like, I had a plant manager, he was not someone I wanted to trust.
yeah.
And I used to always think about trust as kind of this black and white topic, right? Where either I trust someone or I don't.
Mhm,
But this model really allows for us to see that it's actually a scale. And
mhm.
so we may build trust with someone, maybe to a certain level. Maybe we're on level 2 and we need to get to 3 to help influence for the next thing.
Yeah.
So it gives us, some insights on what that looks like. But it's not just about where do people fall on the scale for us, because it's where do we fall on the scale for them.
Right. Exactly.
That's a really big part that I completely encourage you to check that one out because I think it's very insightful to think about trust a little bit differently.
Yeah, I love that, because around influential leadership, it's not really about how much you trust someone
Mhm.
else. It's about how much they trust you. So
Mhm.
you are building that trust for the other person, so that they can trust you when you make a decision, or when you're trying to influence the rest of the organization, to value food safety and quality in a different way. And it's all about how they trust you. I mean, I love that. And
Yeah.
some of
Well,
you might. Oh, go ahead.
had had I considered that back with, the story I shared about that person I was working with on the live side,
Yeah.
wow, it would look differently. Because now I can see clearly that I had this person, probably a level up on the trust ladder versus where I was with this person.
Yeah.
It really gives me a new perspective on kind of what that situation and relationship looked like and how I would do things different.
Right. Yeah. I love that, because I think through a situation. So you might even be thinking out there, well, what happens when you're in a situation and you haven't built that trust yet? How are you being influential? Or you just haven't been there that long. Maybe you need to make a decision and you've only been on the job 20 days, and you really don't know anyone. I've been in a situation where I had a teammate. We were on the same team, and I had just started in that team. And she really didn't trust me,
Mhm.
and she didn't trust a lot of people. But I was one of the people that she didn't trust in this group setting. And I remember afterwards, she had kind of made some comments, and I guess I just confront friction head on, because we talked afterwards, and I remember telling her, I know you don't know me that well, but these are my values. I will never throw you under the bus. I will always talk to you before having conversations with our counterparts. I will always make sure that we are aligned. I will always make sure, I want to do the right thing for us as well as the organization. So I remember walking through those top values with her, because she didn't know me, and she was trying to protect herself, and what she was trying to do and what she was trying to influence. And I remember that. I remember that vividly, and that kind of reminds me too of my values, where it's so important. The earlier you can get your values out and who you are, as a person, it's so important. And the moments that you have to communicate your values, use it, because people will remember it, and then that will help build trust over time in their eyes about you, as long as you're staying consistent with it.
Well, yeah, and right, all of those flow into how do you help influence? Because there's so many different paths. Early, we talked about data, we've talked about creating passion, but it's also about this trust and being able to really align. And, it's so important. And Tia, I love how you're so upfront with it. You're like, I'm just going to tell you what my values are, and I'm going to do this right now. Well, not everybody is like that. Maybe it's my Midwestern upbringing, but that wasn't something that came natural to me. In fact, when I went through these things, then we started doing things different with new team members, because we wanted them to be able to have more conversations with people around like who they were and what things were important to them. And that's why you'll notice, if you guys ever check out the FSQ Boss Accelerator onboarding program, there's an entire module in there about building relationships. Like, how do you build trust? How do you get to know people so that you can begin influencing people and understanding that from when you start your role? You don't need to wait till you're 6 months in and you've got some basic things under your belt. Like, that's too late. People have already seen you. They've made conclusions about you and judgments, and you need to start that influencing and relationship building
early on. That's when I join a new team or a new company, my first 30 to 90 days, my goal is to meet everyone that I'm connected to from a key stakeholder and from a team standpoint. And that might be, my direct counterparts, it's their counterparts, it's my counterparts, and it's even levels up, right? Whoever it is that I need to be able to build an authentic relationship with, someone that needs to trust me in the decisions that I'm making, I make sure that I meet them and get to know them at a level, understand what they care about, have them understand what I care about, so that I can start seeing that consistency, right? So that they can start seeing it, and really trust what I'm doing.
Yeah. Which we could probably have a whole LinkedIn Live about, like, how you do that and how you make so it's not all about me, and help you align me, right? But it is important. And it does kind of go to the next thing where we talked about one of the things with influencing is, how do you look at expanding your network to help be a better influencer and help share the vision of where values are and where you need to go?
Yeah. And really, with expanding your network, it's not just in food safety and quality,
No.
right? It's outside of the food safety and quality group. It may even be outside of your organization. So you can have those conversations on what's happening in the industry, to get your company, up to date on what's happening, right? Or to invest in new technology, or to restructure the organization from a people resource standpoint. It might be talking with your counterparts and your peers outside of your company. So really, expanding your network is critical to influence, because again, people need to know you and trust you, in order for you to be influential.
Yeah. I chuckle because one of the things I never realized how important it was is the relationship I had with, like, our distribution manager. which I know sounds a little bit crazy, but having that person on speed dial was pivotal
Yeah.
because, right, we all know when we are in these moments of, oh crap, what is going on? There are moments we just need to, well, at least meat poultry again. We need to stop everything right now from leaving this facility or being
Right.
delivered. Having someone on speed dial who trusts that when I make that call,
Mm-hmm.
knows that I wouldn't do it unless we were in a moment where we did need a serious halt and stop. That
Absolutely.
was huge outside of food safety and quality to help influence like how we could stay true to our company values and our food safety for our consumers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Mhm.
when the way that I do that is that I set up time with them, right? I
Yeah.
set up reoccurring time with them where, depending on how close we are, we might need to meet weekly or we need to
Mhm.
meet every other week. Sometimes it's once a quarter, just so that I can update them on the things that I'm working on, how I'm learning, how I'm growing, how I can help impact them in the things that they're doing, how I've been doing that. Because again, I'm trying to build that trust through their lens.
Mhm.
So making sure that you do that. And I know, you guys can let us know in the comments, but I know people are out there and they're like, oh man, I hate one-on-ones. I hate sitting in meetings. I hate, like talking about their kids and my kids and, what we're doing over the weekend and that type of thing. And it's that small talk, right? Which, I mean, as you get to know me, even, you know that I'm an extrovert. So, I don't mind that kind of thing. But I know there's a lot of people that's like, oh, small talk has got to go, right?
Yeah.
Um, but
Oh,
the thing,
baby.
right. And it's about, again, building that connection because people trust the people that they know, and it's building that connection and really understanding what is important to them so that you can be influential to them in the future if you need to be.
Well, and it's a give and take, right? So when we
Mhm.
talk about influencing others, yeah, we want to share in this, this blue sky vision of what food safety and quality is. But we also know that we have counterparts in other areas that are struggling and having challenges.
Yeah,
And so, how can we even approach things? Oh, and I'm going to pause for a moment because almost everything has some food safety, quality, regulatory tie, right?
that's
That's
true.
kind of the foundation I'm on. So, when I'm having one on ones or I'm getting together with people, I'm also asking about what are the challenges? Like, what's their top challenge right now?
Hmm.
Like, is there a way that we can help them? Because if we do, it's likely going to have a positive impact on food safety, quality, regulatory.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
that's part of building that network because that's building the trust. That's the give and take. That's the you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Kind of
Right.
all these things that help us influence where we all want to go together.
Absolutely. And that's an influence technique, right? It's all
Mhm.
about an exchange where, I've used that in my career where, I was really good friends with the maintenance manager and there was something I was trying to get him to do and he's like, Tia, I don't have the resources for it. I don't have the time. I'm like, please, you can work on it over the next 6 to 12 months, but I need to get this done. And I remember there was, the more we met, the more it was like, okay, he's struggling with this. And I'm like, you know what? I will make sure that happens if you
Mm.
spend a little bit of time making sure that this happens for me. And it was worth it. And we started working together to make sure that both of those things, got done in a period of time. And it wasn't both of them were equal where it's like, okay, it doesn't need to be done next week. We just need to start working towards it. So the next, fiscal year, it's not a problem and we can kind of tick it off our list. And that's what we did. It was really one where it's like, okay, this is important to you. This is important to me. I'll dedicate some time here. You dedicate some time there, and we'll get it done. And
Mhm.
we were able to build that relationship, across functions because we met with each other at every certain time. I think we kind of met with each other probably once a month, talking through what are the top priorities in maintenance, what are the top priorities in food safety and quality, and what things are coming down.
Yeah. And having that cadence is important. And Jen, I love your comment, right? Because sometimes we get so caught up in well, my to-do list is long and I need to get these done that we put off some of these relationship building activities because
Mhm.
it's not the immediate need today.
Right.
But yet, you guys, we all know about the trade-offs, right? That's a short-term trade-off that you're going to feel long-term.
Mm-hmm.
And we know this is life. There are things that need to pop up, but this nurturing of these relationships so that you can better influence to be more effective is really a big part.
Yeah. And we talked about this last week. If you haven't had a chance to look at episode 4, stepping into the food safety and quality leader role, please take a look at it, because a big piece of being a leader is that you are spending time with people. And if you have a list of things that you're doing and you're not spending time with your team, you're not spending time with your cross-functional counterparts, or if you're in a facility and you're the food safety and quality manager, you're not spending time walking the floor, talking with people, you really haven't stepped into that leadership role. It's important that you make time to do that, because it's going to come back to help you to be influential in your company as you're trying to get things done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Theo, I love your comment about, if you're all going off kind of on a tangent into different places, if you're not focused, there isn't that clear path forward. And that, I mean, I've suffered from that in organizations, right? Because we didn't have the clarity, because we weren't collaborating, even though we said, yeah, we'll work all on this project together. It wasn't collaborative. And you all know how those dominoes fall, not very good. And so if we don't stay aligned and collaborative, then nobody wants to influence, because we're all kind of figuring out where we go.
Right.
So collaboration and influencing to be collaborative is really an important part of helping drive our programs and our culture forward.
Absolutely. So you have to take that step to expand your network outside of who you know, right? And I always say, like, sometimes people are like, oh man, I don't want to go off and play golf. Like I don't like volleyball, I don't like kickball, and I hate potlucks,
I love potlucks. Like you're the word for people in food safety and quality, right? Come on.
Right. But pick a thing. Pick a thing that you're going to go out and you're going to be a part of, so that people can get to know you on an authentic level, so that you can expand your network and really build that trust. Like I remember I worked with a group that did these cooking competitions. If you know me, like I can cook, but I don't like to cook. Like I'm not going to cook for fun. And this team loved to cook, loved to bake and make different things. And you know what? They know that I'm not going to cook for the competition, but I'm going to be there to judge. I'm going to be there to laugh. I'm going to be there to find out who made what, and how creative they got. Because that was a moment of time where I'm really learning about them on a personal level, learning about what they value, right? Learning about what's important to them in their outside lives and why they show up to work every day, right? Like those are the times that you can have those conversations. And when you talk about potlucks and food safety and quality, that's a perfect opportunity to be like, see, this is why we don't do this because of food safety and quality. Or like, people are always like, Tia, what's the temperature control for this? How long should the food sit out?
Should the crock pot be at 3 or 4?
Right. And it's a funny, like less serious way to have those conversations, even in a break room over a food competition, right? Amongst peers. So, pick your thing, right? Pick your thing where you can get to know people.
And Tia, what I like about the story that you shared about kind of the baking and cooking, and you're like, that's not my thing. What I think is important there is how you honored who you are, going, this part, I'm not taking that part, but I can do this part. Because it's not about stepping outside of who you are just to please others, because that doesn't feel authentic. We don't, people see through that. But honoring who you are and who you can be in that space and how you can interact, now that is powerful.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Tia, I see and friends that we are at like 49 minutes. And so we always like to make sure that we are not going, we could be long-winded about this for
We can
quite
talk
a
about
while.
this forever.
We could, but we know not everybody wants to listen for that long, and we actually don't want to either. But we do think this topic of how do we become better influential leaders is really should be top of mind for many of our food safety quality teams and individuals. Because how else will we help drive our mission forward? How do we
Right.
integrate and collaborate if we're not curious and being willing to step into this space?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love it where you talk about practice your words, practice what you're going to say, practice your values, write them down and post them on your wall,
Mhm.
put them on a sticky note, have them in front of you all the time, because you're building that foundation right now. It's going to eventually lead into you being more influential within your organization, and with decisions that are being made.
Yeah. Well, and if you don't practice, how will you know what works? And practicing is part of what helps us understand what's important to this person because it's different than what's important to this person. So as we talk about that influencing, we need to practice these things and observe kind of how it's working and reflect to shift if we need to.
Right, absolutely. Learning.
Mhm.
So we love to give out our email because we love to hear more about what you're doing and how we can support your efforts, right? So
Mhm.
if you have, a situation that you're going through that you might want to talk it through, or you want another example, feel free to email us. We're all about sending out tips and tricks throughout the year. So we'll make sure we will add you to the list. And I mean, we're here to talk more and to talk real talk with you,
Mhm.
even for your specific situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we love all the comments and we know we didn't get through all of them, but we will review them even after this live event to, have
Yes,
some additional discussion with you. But we
absolutely.
are
Like
so
I would,
grateful you're able to join us today.
yes. And I would be really curious, just even talking through friction, have you been in that situation where you thought you were on the same page and then you ran into a little bit of friction, and how you kind of got over those situations? Because I think that's really that's the scary part of influential leadership, where it's like, if it was just easy and you could just go and
Mhm.
people are like, yeah, Jill, what you're saying is great, let's go, it wouldn't be as scary or as hard. But it's those situations where you're trying to influence and people are not picking up what you're putting down. We
Well,
we're
and
just
right, that could
love
be
to
a
hear.
whole nother episode because sometimes, right, what are some of the steps we take before we even hit the friction
Right.
to help understand what's going on? So that might be one that you guys see coming up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. But we appreciate you joining us today, and we hope you can join us next week as well for another Real Talk with Jill and Tia.
Love
So,
it.
hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.